Your character's skills are one of the things you're going to use most in the game when you're rolling the dice. Whenever the dungeon master asks you, you need to understand your skills and how you're going to get the modifiers you're going to use in the game. Hey fellow Game Masters, welcome back. I'm Richard Quiner, and today we are talking about skill modifiers. This is the last step of character creation. I'll also touch briefly on filling out the papers in the end, but today I just want to talk about skill modifiers and how to get the information and the numbers that you're going to use in the game for the different skills. Now, a skill is kind of a subdivision of your ability scores. A skill is something like athletics or stealth or persuasion or deception. It's a smaller subcategory based on your larger ability scores that you have listed. And your character sheet, as you're filling that out, you'll see that it will tell you which ability score your skill will rely on. For example, perception will usually rely on your wisdom, and persuasion will rely on your charisma, athletics relies on strength, and so forth, and it will all be listed out there for you, making it pretty easy to do. So all you have to do, if you have the modifiers for your ability scores already, which I covered briefly in the last video, that there's a table that you look at the table, you see your ability score, and it tells you what the modifier will be. So once you have those, then you look at your skill listing, and it'll be a long list right next to your ability scores, and you're just going to write down that modifier number next to each skill based on the ability score. So for the example, if you are writing your athletics skill modifier, you're going to look at your strength ability score, see what the modifier is for that, and write that down next to your athletics. And you're going to continue down your list until you have all of them filled out. But then things get a little more complicated because we are going to talk about proficiencies and saving throws. Now, your class gives you several skills, and it's listed. It says you are proficient in one of these skills. And it says you have a saving throw of, and it lists some abilities. Like your saving throw could be dexterity and constitution, for example. We'll give you two options. And a proficiency just means you get to add another 2 to that modifier, whatever that may be. So you can write this down on your sheet. Also, you go down, you mark on your sheet which abilities you have a saving throw. So for example, if your saving throws were dexterity and constitution, you would mark that on your sheet and then add a +2 on that sheet to your modifiers for your saving throws. And it's important you understand that there's a different section for saving throws on the sheet. There's a little box that says saving throws, and then you have a bigger box for your actual ability scores and modifiers. They're two different numbers. All the other ability score modifiers will just copy straight over into your saving throw box. The ones that you are proficient in will have a +2. If you go down to your skill section now, you'll have several skills that you picked that you're proficient in or that you have special training in. All of those that you picked, you will add another 2 to those as well. So if you're proficient in stealth and athletics, you will add another 2 to stealth and athletics, and note those on your sheet. It gets complicated because this is where we're talking about math, and for me it's kind of hard to explain because I don't do math a lot except for playing this game. So bear with me as I'm trying to make this understandable for you. You're working on your stealth skill modifier. So you look at your dexterity. Your dexterity gives you a +4 modifier because of the math in the table that we did previously. So you're going to write that down on your stealth, but you are proficient in stealth, so you're going to add another 2 to that, which will make it a +6 to your stealth. So whenever the dungeon master asks you to roll for stealth, you're going to add a 6 onto whatever you roll. It's a very powerful thing, this proficiency. It helps out a lot. So it's important you understand how they work and how they can help your character to make you more efficient and more proficient with being your character. I'm using proficient a lot in this episode. So that kind of explains the bonuses and the numbers that you have to write down. Now when you're filling out your character sheet, you can go in the steps that I kind of outlined where I go, race, class, background, equipment, and then numbers. You can do it that way, or you can do it a slightly different way that I prefer, where I start with my race, and then I list my character's background, because the background has a couple options that will affect the choices I make for my class. But I'll write down all the information for my background on my character sheet, including all my equipment, my languages I can learn, and the skill proficiencies. The background gives you some proficiencies that you can have, and you add that on your character sheet. Then you add your class information, which will give you more skill proficiencies to choose from. The reason I do the background first is because it just gives you 2 right off the bat, and then your class gives you options. So if you have the 2 that you already have and your class gives you options, you know you don't need to pick the ones you already have because it doesn't add up. You don't get double proficiency in something, but you can make better choices and make a more better class or a better character sheet with that a little cleaner. Yes, you could say you won't have to go back and forth and kind of pick because you already have the information right in front of you. Then after the class, then I will do the equipment and make sure I have all my ability scores lined up, and then I will fill in all the numbers across the board. Hit die is determined by the class, as I mentioned earlier, which will be listed. It's usually a die that you roll and include a number, which is usually your Constitution modifier you add on to your die rolls. Armor class uses your Dexterity modifier that I didn't mention in the equipment section, and then you should basically have your character ready to go. Important thing with equipment when you're with your weapons, it does use your modifier, so your ability scores will affect the weapon and how easy you can hit something with. If you are using a strength-based weapon or a dexterity-based weapon, they will use those modifiers or proficiencies included to make that a little easier. So read up on that and do the math and figure out all these numbers ahead of time, so when you're at the table having to do all this, it'll make it a lot easier and you'll have a much better time. So that is the end of my series of how to make a Dungeons & Dragons character. I know this isn't a step-by-step watch me fill out a sheet of paper. I could do that video, but I wanted to do a series just more touching on each of the different topics and giving out my 2 cents of the information. So, thank you for watching.